Soft jazz music plays at a low volume through the ceiling speakers. The scene is tranquil, refined, and ordinary until the restaurant's front doors swing open and uniformed police officers enter. The perspective of the body camera shifts subtly with each step the officer takes across the polished flooring. Guests look up. Servers momentarily halt their movements because the presence of law enforcement in such a setting invariably disrupts the ambience, and the camera meticulously records the initial direction of his gaze. It bypasses the host stand, bypasses management, and directs straight to one particular table. A black couple is seated by the window. They appear to be in their early 30s, dressed formally. Their dinner plates are before them, largely untouched. A folded anniversary card rests beside the candle centerpiece. The woman is smiling gently at something the man has just said. He is holding her hand across the table. The atmosphere is quiet, intimate, and celebratory until the officer stops beside them. The body camera tilts downward slightly, framing them as they are seated. His hand rests near his duty belt, adopting an authoritative stance even before any dialogue commences. Then he speaks. His tone is flat. There is no greeting. There is no introduction. Afternoon, folks. We got a call about some people hanging around too long, making guests uncomfortable. The couple pauses their mid-conversation. Confusion swiftly replaces their earlier warmth. The man looks up first, maintaining a calm and respectful demeanor. We're just eating our lunch, officer. We haven't done anything wrong. The officer subtly shifts his stance, causing the camera to shake momentarily with the movement. His gaze slowly sweeps across their table, taking in the plates, the glasses, the candle, and the card before returning to them. Yeah, well, he says, this isn't really the place for your type to linger. An immediate silence descends. The woman's hand slowly lowers from her wineglass. The man's expression tightens, not with outright anger yet, but with a dawning awareness. Maybe wrap it up and head out. All right, the officer adds, as nearby diners cast glances in their direction because the phrase, your type, cannot remain concealed in quiet rooms. Before we proceed any further, kindly share your location in the comments section. Let us ascertain the geographical reach of this documentary. The man leans back slightly in his chair, his composure intact, his control maintained, but he is now fully attuned to the unfolding situation. Sir, he states evenly, we have just ordered our entrees. We are celebrating our anniversary. We are not lingering, we are dining. The officer tilts his head almost imperceptibly, as if the explanation holds no significance. We've had complaints, he replies. From whom? The woman inquires softly. He gestures vaguely around the restaurant. Guests. She glances around. No one is directly looking at them. Most patrons have resumed their meals. A few are observing discreetly, but no one appears distressed. We have been here for less than 40 minutes, she states. The officer shrugs. Still got a call. The man slowly folds his napkin and places it on the table, his movements deliberate and his breathing controlled. Respectfully, officer, a call does not equate to having committed an offense. The officer shifts his weight again. The body camera's angle dips slightly as he leans closer to their table. His voice lowers now, becoming sharper. Look, I'm trying to handle this politely. We are too, the man responds. Then let's not make it complicated, the officer states. His eyes again scan the dining room before returning to them. This establishment has a certain atmosphere to maintain. There it is again. Not the language of policy, but of social stratification. The woman speaks this time, her voice calm but firmer. We are a part of that atmosphere. We are paying customers. The officer exhales audibly through his nose. Yeah, he says slowly, but some folks feel uncomfortable. Because we are eating, she questions. He does not provide a direct answer. Instead, he remarks, you've been seated here for a considerable time without significant activity. The man gestures to their plates. We're waiting on our entrees. Or lingering, the officer retorts. Silence descends once more, but the tension is now palpable as nearby diners are clearly listening. A server cautiously approaches from behind the officer. Is there an issue here? She asks. The officer does not turn fully toward her. We're handling it. She hesitates. "They've been wonderful guests," she states carefully. "No disturbance at all." The officer finally glances back at her. "Ma'am, you can step away. This is police business." She pauses, then nods reluctantly and steps back, though she does not move far, as even staff can sense when something is amiss. The officer redirects his attention to the couple. "Like I said," he continues, "maybe it's best if you finish up and move along." The man shakes his head slightly. "We are not being asked to leave because of the time." The officer's jaw tightens imperceptibly. "Excuse me?" "We are being asked to leave because you believe we do not belong here," the man states calmly. The woman lightly places her hand on his arm, a gesture of grounding and support. The officer's tone hardens. "You're putting words in my mouth." "Then clarify yours," the man counters. Silence stretches as diners are now openly observing. Wine glasses are paused mid-air, forks hover above plates. The officer leans closer again, his voice low, but clearly audible on the body camera audio. "Let me be direct," he says. "This isn't the kind of restaurant where people like you typically spend 3 hours at a table." The woman's eyes widen slightly. "We haven't even been here an hour," she states. But the damage is already inflicted because the phrase, "people like you," carries a heavier weight than any policy ever could. The man now leans forward, still composed, but his voice is firmer. "Officer, we are celebrating our anniversary. We reserved this table weeks ago." The officer straightens. "Reservation under what name?" "Daniel Carter," the man replies. The officer stares at him for a moment longer than necessary, then glances at the anniversary card on the table, still unopened, still private. "Look," the officer says, "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to resolve complaints." "There is no complaint," the man replies. "You keep saying that as if you were the one who initiated the call," the officer snaps back. The woman exhales slowly. "This is humiliating," she says quietly. The officer shrugs faintly. "It wouldn't be if you simply cooperated." "With what?" she asks. "Leaving." "We are not leaving," the man states calmly. Silence descends again because refusal alters the nature of the encounter. The officer's posture subtly changes, shifting from conversational to more authoritative. His hand rests closer to his belt now, not aggressively, but implying a potential escalation if necessary. "You're refusing a lawful order," he asks. "What law are we breaking?" the man inquires. No response, just a stare, because there is none. A nearby diner whispers to another table. Phones begin to be subtly lifted. Not obvious yet, but recording has commenced. The body camera captures the reflections of screens in the restaurant windows because moments like this are no longer private. The officer speaks again, his tone now colder. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "No," the man replies evenly. "You are." Silence. The jazz music continues to play faintly overhead. Glasses clink somewhere across the room. But at this table, everything is frozen. Because what began as dinner has morphed into a public confrontation fueled by assumption rather than action, and the body camera continues to document every second. The unsolicited approach, the racially charged language, the attempt to force removal without justification, the humiliation layered upon a celebration. The officer still believes he is in control of the situation. He still believes he is resolving a complaint. He still believes this is a routine matter. But what he does not yet realize is that the very table he is attempting to clear is not merely reserved, it is owned. Because the man he is pressuring to leave his anniversary dinner is one of the restaurant's co-owners. And the staff watching nervously from across the dining floor already know this. They are simply awaiting the moment the officer pushes things too far before management intervenes. Because once that revelation occurs, this will cease to be about a complaint and will instead become a matter of misused authority, documented bias, and consequences that begin the instant this footage leaves the body camera server. The body camera continues recording without interruption. No cuts, no edits, just an unvarnished record of escalating tension in real time. The officer remains standing over the couple's table, his posture rigid, his authority projected forward, his patience wearing thin, and the longer they refuse to comply, the more personal his tone becomes. He studies Daniel again. His suit is tailored, his watch expensive, his posture confident even while seated. This does not align with the narrative he has already constructed in his mind, and that mismatch irritates him. "You're really going to sit here and argue instead of just leaving?" he asks. Daniel maintains a level voice. "I'm going to sit here and finish dinner with my wife." "Yes." The officer scoffs under his breath. The body camera dips as his shoulders shift. Unbelievable. He glances around the dining room again, scanning faces, seeking validation that is not present because no one appears threatened. No one looks uncomfortable. If anything, they appear uncomfortable watching him. He turns back to the table. "You know, most people in your position would have just left by now." Daniel tilts his head slightly. "My position?" "Yeah," the officer says, instead of trying to make some kind of point. "We're not making a point," Daniel replies. "We're eating." The woman squeezes his hand lightly under the table. It's silent reassurance, but the officer notices the gesture and misinterprets it entirely. "See that?" he says. "Now you're making her uncomfortable too." She looks up at him immediately. "I'm uncomfortable because of you, officer." He smirks faintly. "Right." Then his voice lowers again, becoming sharper, more direct. "Let me save you some embarrassment." Silence. "Places like this thrive on reputation," he continues. "Regular clientele, certain expectations." Daniel watches him steadily. And sometimes, management would rather avoid situations. The word hangs, loaded and undefined yet obvious. The woman speaks again, her voice firmer now. "What situation are we creating by eating dinner we paid for?" The officer shrugs. "You're drawing attention." "You drew the attention," Daniel replies calmly. That statement lands because it is true. And truth irritates authority when authority desires compliance. The officer's stance tightens. The body camera angle shifts closer as he steps nearer to the edge of the table. "You know what the call actually said?" he asks. Daniel does not respond. The officer continues anyway. "They said there were two individuals who didn't look like they belonged, occupying a premium window table for hours." The woman's brows knit. "That's a lie." He shrugs again. Perception matters. Daniel leans back slowly in his chair, his movements measured and controlled. "So someone called the police because black people were dining near a window." The officer's jaw tightens. "You're twisting it." "No," Daniel replies. "I'm clarifying it." A few diners nearby exchange glances. Phones rise higher now, no longer subtle because the tone has shifted from coded insinuation to documented fact. The officer notices the phones and instead of de-escalating, he doubles down. "Go ahead and record," he says loudly. "It won't change the fact that you're being asked to leave." Daniel's voice remains even. "We're being told to leave, not asked." The officer points toward the exit. "Same result if you don't cooperate." The woman exhales slowly. "You're threatening us over dinner." "I'm enforcing a complaint," he replies. "Based on race," Daniel states flatly. The officer laughs once, a short, dismissive sound. "Everything's about race with you people." Silence slams the table again because that phrase does not blur on audio, it stamps itself permanently. A server across the room freezes mid-step. Another guest audibly whispers, "Wow!" But the officer continues. "If you spent less time playing victim and more time respecting establishments, situations like this wouldn't happen." Daniel studies him carefully now, not with anger, but with observation, mentally documenting just as the body camera is digitally. "We made a reservation," he says calmly. "We checked in, we ordered, we paid a deposit for this table." The officer tilts his head. Says who? Daniel gestures subtly toward the host stand. "Your problem isn't with our reservation. It's with us sitting in it." The officer leans closer again, his voice dropping low, but still clearly captured on body camera audio. "You know what my problem is?" Daniel does not respond. The officer answers himself. My problem is people who think dressing nice gives them access to spaces they didn't earn. The woman's eyes widen slightly. Excuse me. You heard me. Daniel's posture shifts for the first time. Not aggressively, but upright, grounded. You're out of line. The officer straightens immediately. No, you're out of place. Gasps ripple quietly across nearby tables because now the racism isn't implied, it's declared and recorded. Daniel glances around the dining room slowly, taking in the witnesses, the staff frozen in uncertainty. Then he looks back at the officer, still calm, still controlled. Officer, I'm going to say this once. The officer folds his arms. Go ahead. We are not leaving. Silence again. He nods faintly to himself as if he expected that answer. Then he reaches for his radio. The body camera angle tilts as his arm lifts. Dispatch, I've got 2 uncooperative individuals refusing to comply with removal request. The woman's voice cuts in immediately. Removal request for what? He ignores her, still speaking into the radio. Possible trespass situation. That word lands heavier than all the others. Trespass in a restaurant they legally reserved. Daniel's eyes narrow slightly. You're escalating this without cause. The officer lowers the radio. You escalated it when you refused to leave. We refuse discrimination, Daniel corrects. The officer smirks again. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Across the restaurant, management staff begin gathering near the back corridor, whispering, watching, because the body camera isn't the only camera recording anymore. Internal security feeds are live, and every word being said is echoing upstairs in real time. But the officer does not know that yet. He just sees a couple who won't comply, and his ego refuses retreat. You know what happens next? He asks. Daniel does not answer. Backup arrives. We escort you out. Simple. The woman shakes her head slowly. This is unbelievable. No, the officer replies. What's unbelievable is the entitlement. Daniel's voice lowers now, calm but firm. You think we don't belong here? The officer shrugs again. I think people should stay in environments that fit them. There it is again, blunt, unfiltered, and permanently logged on body camera storage. The tension in the restaurant has fully shifted now. Jazz still plays. Glasses still clink, but no one is eating because the anniversary table has become the center of gravity for the entire room, and the officer still believes he holds authority here, still believes he's enforcing order, still believes the couple will fold before backup arrives. But what he doesn't realize is that management isn't preparing to remove the couple. They're preparing to confront him. Because internal records already confirmed something critical minutes ago. Daniel Carter isn't just a guest. He's listed on the ownership license, co-founder, equity partner, his name printed on the very business registration framed in the lobby entrance, which means the officer standing over him is threatening to trespass the man from property he legally owns. And once that revelation hits the body camera audio, this confrontation won't just escalate, it will flip completely because pressure is still rising. Misunderstandings are no longer misunderstandings, they're documented bias. And the next voice that enters this conversation won't belong to law enforcement, it will belong to ownership. The officer's radio call for backup still hangs in the air when movement starts behind him. Not fast, not chaotic, but controlled, professional, from the back corridor leading toward the kitchen. 3 individuals step onto the dining floor. A floor manager, the restaurant's general manager, and a suited executive holding a tablet. Staff across the room subtly straighten as they approach because leadership presence inside the dining area never happens casually. The officer hears the footsteps and turns slightly. The body camera angle pivots with him. The general manager speaks first, calm but firm. Officer, is there a problem here? He gestures casually toward Daniel and his wife. Yeah, we received complaints about them lingering and making guests uncomfortable. They're refusing to leave. Silence follows that statement, but not from uncertainty, from restraint, because the staff standing behind the officer already know what to expect. He doesn't. The suited executive glances down at the tablet briefly, then back at Daniel. Recognition. Immediate. He steps forward. Mr. Carter, he says respectfully. Apologies for the interruption. The officer's head turns sharply. The body camera catches the shift. Wait, you know him? He asks. The executive looks at him evenly. Yes. Pause. Then calmly. He's one of the owners. Silence detonates across the dining room. Glasses freeze mid-air. Forks stop moving. Even the jazz music suddenly feels too loud in the background. The officer blinks once, as if the sentence didn't register. Owner, he repeats. The general manager nods. Co-founder, equity partner. His name is on the business license. The body camera dips slightly as the officer looks back at Daniel. Really looks this time. The suit, the watch, the composure, the confidence. Everything he dismissed earlier now reframes itself instantly. Daniel doesn't speak right away. He just holds eye contact. Calm, steady, in control. The officer clears his throat slightly. Well, we still had a complaint. The executive responds immediately. No guests filed a complaint. That lands heavier because it removes his last procedural cover. The floor manager adds quietly. The call came from an anonymous outside number. We're reviewing it now. The officer's posture shifts, less dominant, more defensive. He gestures vaguely. They were occupying a premium table for hours. They've been here 43 minutes. The manager cuts in, tablet screen still lit. Timestamp visible, verified. Silence wraps tighter now because every justification he offered is dissolving one by one. Daniel finally speaks, his voice calm and measured. Officer, you tried to remove me from a restaurant I co-own. No anger, no raised tone, just fact. The officer exhales slowly. Well, that information wasn't available to me. Daniel tilts his head slightly. It shouldn't have mattered. That lands harder than anything else said so far, because ownership isn't the issue. Bias is. The executive steps forward another half pace, professional but firm. Body camera footage will need to be preserved for corporate and legal review. The officer's jaw tightens faintly because now he understands. This isn't ending inside the restaurant. Daniel continues calmly. You approached us without cause. Pause. You used racial language. Another pause. You attempted unlawful removal. The officer doesn't interrupt because there's nothing to argue. The audio recorded it all. Around them, diners begin whispering again. Phones still raised because now they are witnessing the reversal. Authority dissolving in real time. The officer finally nods stiffly. Well, if there's no complaint, you're free to continue your meal. Daniel holds his gaze a second longer, then replies quietly, We always were. Silence again. The officer steps back. Containment posture gone. Dominance gone. Presence reduced to procedure. Management remains beside the table, a protective buffer now. The body camera footage perfectly encapsulates the final visual contrast. The lone officer stands juxtaposed against the seated couple who remain dignified, composed, and precisely where they belonged throughout their ordeal. What began as an attempt to forcibly remove them has instead illuminated and officially documented instances of prejudice. Furthermore, the recording device on the officer's own person has transformed into irrefutable evidence that will follow him long after this evening concludes. If you are finding this documentary engaging, please consider liking and subscribing. The developments to come involve not merely accountability, but career-ending repercussions. The body camera continues to record even after the initial confrontation has ended. This is because these devices do not cease functioning when tensions abate. They persist in documenting events that unfold after authority is challenged, after egos are deflated, and after reality becomes undeniable. The officer steps away from the table, his posture no longer authoritative or investigative, but purely procedural. His radio remains silent on his shoulder, as backup units had already been instructed to stand down the moment management confirmed the couple's ownership of the establishment. A sense of calm slowly begins to re-establish itself throughout the dining room. Conversations cautiously resume in hushed tones, and servers resume their duties, albeit with a newfound carefulness, as everyone present understands they have just witnessed a significant, though not overtly loud, event. The general manager remains by Daniel and his wife's side, maintaining a professional, respectful, and protective demeanor. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, we sincerely apologize for this interruption, he states. Daniel nods once, his composure unwavering, though now imbued with a greater sense of firmness. This wasn't an interruption, he responds quietly. It was discrimination. The manager does not contest this statement, as the audio from the body camera has already corroborated it. The executive in the suit adds, Corporate legal has already requested the preservation of all footage, including internal cameras and law enforcement body cam. The officer clearly overhears this. The body camera captures a subtle shift in his breathing, as the implications of these consequences now feel tangible, not merely hypothetical. Daniel speaks again, still seated and composed. You approached us without cause. You profiled us publicly. You attempted to remove us from property we own. The officer nods stiffly, offering no defense as none would withstand scrutiny. Management turns to face him fully, their tone professional yet chilling. Officer, your badge number and department will be included in the incident report. He nods again. A brief, tight movement. Understood. However, the body cam records the tension in his jaw. As reports signify review, review implies scrutiny, and scrutiny inevitably leads to disciplinary action. Within 24 hours, the footage is formally logged, encompassing not only the officer's body camera, but also restaurant surveillance, the dining floor audio, host stand records, reservation logs, and the anonymous call trace, all compiled into a single incident file. This meticulous documentation becomes a form of protection when civil liability is a possibility. Internal Affairs initiates an inquiry within 3 days, as the language captured on the body camera directly violates departmental conduct policy. Key violations are listed: racially biased language, abuse of authority, attempted unlawful removal, escalation without cause, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. The anonymous complaint call is traced and found to be unsubstantiated, lacking any corroboration from other guests or any formal disturbance report, thus completely removing the officer's final justification. 30 days later, disciplinary findings are concluded. The ruling is unequivocal. Sustained misconduct, not a procedural error, but bias-driven conduct. The penalty includes immediate suspension without pay, mandatory civil rights retraining, a psychological fitness review, and probationary reinstatement pending final board approval. However, the repercussions do not cease there. The body camera footage is no longer confined to internal review. Once submitted as part of a civil rights complaint, it becomes discoverable evidence. Daniel files a formal complaint not driven by emotion but by professional necessity on behalf of both himself and the business. The claims include wrongful targeting, civil rights violation, public defamation, interference with business operations, and emotional distress inflicted upon patrons as the humiliation occurred publicly on their anniversary in front of a full dining room. The settlement process proceeds rapidly as video evidence eliminates ambiguity. There is no need for courtroom theatrics or debates over witness credibility. Only footage, audio, and facts are presented. The final civil resolution results in a 6-figure settlement, jointly paid by the department and its municipal liability insurer. Mandatory departmental policy revisions are issued, including an updated bias response protocol and tightened bodycam review standards. This is because lawsuits not only incur financial costs, but also compel systemic reform. Back within the restaurant, life continues. Reservations remain consistently booked, and the dining room stays full. However, policy changes quietly follow the incident. Direct management intervention is now required before any police-initiated removals of guests, and anonymous complaints necessitate prior staff verification. Alerts notifying ownership of presence are added to reservation systems. Leadership has learned a critical lesson. Authority unchecked breeds liability, and liability reshapes policy far more effectively than any complaint ever could. 6 months later, Daniel and his wife return to the same window table on the same night of the year for their anniversary. The candles are lit again and wine is poured once more. The atmosphere, however, feels different. It is not tense but rather one of protection, as the staff now recognizes them instantly, not just as owners but as the couple who insisted on accountability. A server pauses beside their table before delivering their entrees. "Happy anniversary again, Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she says warmly. Daniel offers a faint smile. "Thank you." This time, there is no police presence to interrupt their evening, no confrontation, and no humiliation, just dinner, as it should have been from the outset. The body camera footage from that night is archived permanently, now serving as training material in departmental bias education modules. Recorded misconduct becomes tangible evidence for instruction, not mere theory. What it captured was not simply an individual officer's error, it depicted assumption, offensive language, and the misuse of power in a setting where it was entirely unwarranted. What began as an attempt to remove the couple concluded with an officer facing discipline, a department undergoing an audit, policies being rewritten, a civil settlement being paid, and a documented reminder that authority without accountability invariably collapses under the weight of evidence. The officer believed he was enforcing order, but in reality, he was enforcing the demise of his own credibility, a lesson captured in its entirety by the body camera on his chest without missing a single second. The end.